So this may come as a surprise here, but these pictures are of the same person. This is me at the end of my addiction, and this is me 6 months ago. It's amazing what a shower can do, right? I know we're here to talk about humor today, but let's start with addiction, because anyone who looks at this lovely picture should also remember the one that came before it. And you wouldn't be alone if you were wondering, what the hell happened to Jess? My parents asked that every day for years. My brother, my friends, anyone who would ever know me to look like this. And then later saw me become this. And would you believe me if I told you I had what most people would think of as an ideal childhood? I was loved by my parents, who are still married today. My dad coached my soccer teams. I got good grades. I was socially involved. I was this girl. I remember laughing and playing with my friends. Every summer I would go and stay with my cousin Emily, and all we would do was laugh. We would just lay on our bed and speak to each other in different accents and tell ridiculous stories and just laugh so hard until we peed. Do you remember the last time you laughed so hard you peed your pants? Sadly, I do it all the time. How about you laugh so hard you cried? We all know that deep, awesome laughter that just makes you forget the tough stuff in life. That's what I found in childhood. But then other things happen too. And it's the other things that bring us back to her. So here's the not so funny part. I was molested from the age of 4 to 5 by a babysitter. I'm telling you this because I think it's important that we stop hiding our secrets. And like Brene Brown says, get out from under shame. This happened on a regular basis every time I was babysat, and I never told a soul about it. As a child, I felt like I did something to bring this on, like it was my fault that it started happening, as a lot of children do. And to keep the shame and the guilt from killing me, at the age of 13, I started binging and purging and sneaking alcohol from my dad's liquor cabinet. I called this shame the screaming demon, and food and alcohol were the only things that successfully quieted the screaming demon. It was as if an elephant was lifted off my chest, and for the first time I could breathe. This is how I medicated my anxiety and panic that permeated my life due to holding on to this insidious secret. Alcohol became the only way I could cope with life, until it brought me back to this. So you're probably wondering, what brought me there and why did I keep the picture? By my early 20s, I was functioning but barely hanging on by a thread. My addiction had progressed to drinking a fifth of vodka a day, shockingly all while working as a comedic actor. You see, this is when I used comedy to numb, like a lot of comedians do. I hadn't yet discovered that it could heal. At 27, I went to my first of 9 treatment centers and was admitted to 6 different psychiatric hospitals that same year. In 2013, during a relapse, I had a hemorrhagic stroke from falling over a railing drunk and ended up paralyzed and in emergency brain surgery. So they say first using is fun, then it's fun with problems, then it's just problems. You could say I traveled to the deep end of that last stage. After only 2 weeks in the acute rehab facility, my brain had miraculously healed. I was able to walk again and I was released. But because my deep end just wasn't deep enough yet, I began drinking again just 2 months after having brain surgery, and it got way worse. Just 6 months later, in 2014, I was admitted to ICU weighing only 78 pounds with a rampant blood staph infection and a blood alcohol concentration of 0.503. The acid from my urine had burned holes through my skin because I had been lying in one spot for over a month in a drunken stupor. I needed 2 immediate blood transfusions, and every organ in my body, including my heart and brain, were failing. My doctor told me I would not have survived the night without medical intervention. And that's why I keep this photo. Because laughter heals, but trauma reminds. After finally getting sober, I began to look at my addiction not just as an escape from pain or a bad habit, but as a manifestation of dysfunctional brain chemistry. And I believe that adverse childhood experiences, known as ACEs, can trigger this manifestation. Of course, addiction is multifactorial, and in my opinion, there's not just one cause. It's the perfect storm of genetic susceptibility, environment, upbringing, trauma. But let me explain the correlation between adverse childhood experiences and addiction. ACEs actually change how our brain works and how we process and respond to life events. Because here's the other thing. I'm not alone. An alarming 90% of women with substance dependence were sexually abused during childhood. So now for the science part. There's always a science part, right? The primary brain system involved in trauma is the nucleus accumbens, which is the pleasure reward center. It's the same part of the brain that is implicated in substance dependence. It inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which oversees impulse control, executive function, rational decision making. There are also changes in the amygdala, the brain's fear response center. So you see, those deepened problems were actually part of my primitive survival area of my brain, or what some people call the reptilian part of the brain. And this part of my brain was now in the driver's seat, dictating my life and behavior. My brain was like the upside down in the show Stranger Things. There are real neurologic reasons why people exposed to early adversity or childhood trauma are more likely to engage in high risk or addictive behavior. When a child experiences adversity or trauma, there is a cascade effect in their brains and bodies. And when the stress response is triggered over and over, which is what we do, we relive the trauma over and over, this puts the person in a perpetual state of survival. And when a human is in survival mode long enough, illness manifests. Alcohol on a physical level initially suppressed my overactive nervous system. It also successfully inhibited my hypervigilant fear response, making the world seem like a safer place to be in. I used alcohol like most people use medication. After it had progressed to physical dependence, however, it created a rebound effect, causing an increase in stress response and cortisol, leading to withdrawal and that vicious cycle of relapse. I was bound to alcohol as the only survival mechanism I knew. And the longer I depended on it, the more it seemed like there was no way out. Ever since I was a little kid, I had this inherent feeling there was something beyond the physical world, just waiting to be discovered. I would always ask my parents questions like, what is God? Or why do humans exist? Regular 8-year-old stuff. The world felt like a terrifying place, and I wanted answers. Dr. Daniel Sumrock, the director of the Center of Addiction Sciences at the University of Tennessee, calls addiction ritualized compulsive comfort seeking. Having found food and alcohol at a young age, I was compulsively seeking comfort even at the price of my own life. Dr. Sumrock says the solution to changing the unhealthy ritualized compulsive comfort seeking is to address a person's adverse childhood experiences, treat them with respect, and help them find a ritualized compulsive comfort-seeking behavior that won't kill them or put them in jail or make them take amazing glamour shots like the one I've showed you. Whether we're talking about obesity, addiction to cigarettes, alcohol, or opioids, they all have one thing in common. They are ritualized compulsive comfort-seeking behaviors people do in order to ameliorate their deep-seated pain. As Gabor Mate says, we shouldn't be asking why the addiction. We should be asking why the pain. So now for the part when life starts getting fun again. I remember the first time I realized I might be okay, I was sitting in a recovery meeting and I was asked to share my story. I was sharing about a very vulnerable, dark part of my story, and suddenly everyone started laughing. And then I found myself laughing. It was that deep, awesome, contagious laughter that just filled the room with hope and levity. Something in me began to soften. I felt like I was back on Emily's bed again, giggling over our accents. I suddenly had an epiphany. Why would human beings be biologically hardwired to laugh if it didn't serve a purpose that was advantageous to their survival? This was it. This is what we needed to heal our pain and our past. There's a Yiddish proverb, as soap is to the body, laughter is to the soul. And that night in that dingy church basement, I began to heal. I began to feel cleansed. Have you ever seen Steel Magnolias? There's this great scene where all the ladies are at the funeral of Julia Roberts' character, who's Sally Field's daughter. Sally is angry. She's mad at the world for taking her daughter. And she's deep in her pain and her trauma when all of a sudden Olympia Dukakis' character shoves forward the old grump of the group, Wheezy, played by Shirley MacLaine, and says, "Hit Wheezy!" And Wheezy's like, "What the hell?" And she says it again, "Hit Wheezy!" And all anyone can do is laugh, including Sally Fields. And you know in that moment that no matter what we're going through, we're going to be okay. That is the power of laughter. And wheezy's not the only evidence. In a recent study conducted at Loma Linda University in Southern California, 20 normal, healthy adults sat in a room and watched a funny video for 20 minutes, while a control group sat in a room calmly with no video. Afterwards, their saliva levels were analyzed for stress hormones. Those who got to laugh for 20 minutes scored better on short-term memory tests and had a significant decrease in the saliva levels of the stress hormone cortisol. In addition to reducing stress hormones, laughter increases endorphins, releasing dopamine in the brain, providing a sense of pleasure and reward. It triggers the release of endogenous opiate, which helps modulate pain. It also activates the release of serotonin, the neurochemical that is affected by the most common types of SSRIs or antidepressants. Laughter is literally medicine. Neuroscientist and author Dan Siegel says the only way we can change the neural pathways of the brain are through empathy and connection. One of the best ways to connect with others is through laughter. Laughter subverts language. It contagiously forms social bonds. Have you ever been to another country and you started laughing at something with someone from that country, but neither of you spoke each other's language, but you both knew what you were laughing about? That's the connection that it instantly creates. The endorphin effect also explains why laughter is so contagious. Spreading endorphins through a group promotes a sense of safety and togetherness. That's why when someone starts laughing, others will start laughing even if they're not sure what everyone's laughing about. Laughter is a neurological response to someone else's joy. And when we participate in joy, we begin to heal trauma. But it does so much more than that. Laughter also has an impact on your physical health. Research has shown that laughter has an anti-inflammatory effect that protects the blood vessels and the heart muscles from the damaging effects of cardiovascular disease. It also lessens the body's response to stress, which is directly linked to inflammation, addiction, cancer, you name it. When I was in that church basement that night, I didn't know what laughter was doing to me. In a way, its effects were just as surprising as addiction. For so many years, I had been this girl. And that girl hadn't laughed, really laughed in years. My life was a crushing struggle for survival. There were days I didn't even want to live. But then I found other people with that same photo at home, those same struggles, the same questions from their friends and family. How did this happen to them? And through their stories of making it, I began to respond to their joy. I learned to hit wheezy, and I was brought back to those summers laughing until I peed. It's been in the last couple of years that I've begun to heal this little girl, that I have finally become this woman. And if I'm now laughing my way through this journey, we all can. Thank you.